Alongside Adam Giardino, I'm AJ Cannell. This is Holy Cross Men's Soccer. Today, the Crusaders taking on the Colgate Raiders here on the Patriot League Network on Stadium. Holy Cross 4-8-2 against Colgate 5-9-1. And taking a look at the statistics.
The end of the season, it's a few games away from that, still 3 games left to go on the docket. And for Holy Cross, for Colgate, they come in with a 3-way tie for 5th place. And really what it means is if one of these two teams comes away with a win, then all of a sudden the other team is looking at 7th place, and that's outside looking in on the Patriot League postseason tournament.
Well, plus you have teams right beneath them where these two teams are 2-3-1 along with Army. American and Lafayette are both 2-4. And Colgate, they've already lost to Army as a part of that 3-way tie. So in particular, the Raiders must be feeling like they have to have this one in order to hold up in terms of a potential tiebreaker.
And while the tiebreaker gets a little tricky beyond the initial tiebreaker, that first one that you go to is head-to-head. So like you said, if Colgate they could do all they can against the rest of the Patriot League, but at the end of the day and at the end of the season, if they're tied with either Holy Cross or Colgate after potentially dropping games to both of those teams, then Colgate would be that team that bumps down an extra spot. So this, not quite at that finishing tape, but getting pretty close for both these teams.
Of course, Holy Cross is taking on Army. Coming up next, Brad Ross plays it up the far side for the Crusaders. That one's stopped there by Kafora. And some possession early on for Holy Cross. Very early in this one. Crusaders, of course, in the home whites. The dark maroon, a little bit of gray up there on the road for Colgate.
And we're going to be talking about the standings throughout tonight's broadcast. But, just one more note with regards to the standings. The team that's in 4th place right now in conference is Bucknell. And
that's it. Offsides right there. DeLeo was making a run for Colgate.
And Bucknell, they're 3-3. The teams that are tied for 8th and 9th in the conference are 2-4. They're 1 game back. Bucknell dropped a game earlier this year to American. If you talk about just flipping one result, all of a sudden Bucknell goes from being that fourth-place team in the league and being sole possession of ninth place with the tiebreaker. So, that's with 6 teams going to the postseason. You hear coaches talk about it throughout the entire season that, especially in soccer where games are often just decided by the one goal, that you can't be giving games away, especially in conference play. And you don't have to look any further than that. One goal goes one way instead of the other, and instead of fourth place, you're tied for 8th and really in 9th place.
So you have teams 4 through 9 in the standings separated by only 3 points. And as far as how these games get decided, both of these head coaches, Marco Kuhlman on the Holy Cross side, Eric Ronning for Colgate, have had quotes this year acknowledging how these games in the Patriot League tend to just come down to one play. One mistake, one positive play. Place lays it off for the senior captain Callahan. His ball inside gets rejected back out by the back line for Colgate. The Raiders giving up 1.7 goals per game about this season. Defensive numbers certainly down a little bit this year after missing out on a 4-year starter, all-tournament performer in goal, Ricky Brown. And all the production they got from him last year. Also the defensive player of the year, Zach Taman, in the conference last year. He graduates from this Colgate team, so certainly a bit of a reduction in the defensive performance for Colgate this season.
And, last 3 seasons, Colgate has come away with the regular season and that postseason title. And Mark Plotkin, one of the assistant coaches for Colgate's in his 4th season, he's only experienced that kind of success. His first 3 years on campus, they had that, where they had the regular season, the postseason titles. So Colgate, a team that's not just used to finishing better than 500, a mark where so far this year they're 5-9-1, but they're used to being a dominant force in the Patriot League, both in that regular season and beyond.
They're the defending champs. They were picked to finish 2nd in the preseason poll, and they've kind of pushed down a little bit towards the middle of the pack in the conference. Holy Cross, they were picked last preseason. They've exceeded expectations so far in a tie with this team that was picked 2nd in the preseason. I think a lot of confidence in Coach Ronning's program that they were picked 2nd, because they really did lose quite a lot from last year's championship team going into this year, as good as they were last year.
Well, it's one of those things where you win so many titles in a row that you just assume that the team's going to plug the gaps, and that there are guys down on that roster that have been part of the system and been part of the process that'll figure out a way to step up.
Racing over and tracking that one down for Holy Cross, Henry Stutz, the 6'3 junior from Cincinnati, in goal. Because of the weather, it's pouring pretty good out there right now. Rain was in the forecast. No surprise, we're getting the rain. We can only have the camera inside. So because of those restrictions, we're sorry we don't have the full broadcast, and in terms of having more cameras and being able to get coverage to the corners of the field. So there's some blind spots due to the weather with the camera. So we apologize for that, but we'll do our best to let you know what's going on if the ball gets deep into the corner, kind of like it is right now. Place just lofts it over everything. And how do you think, Adam, these conditions, granted both teams are having to play through the same conditions, but very wet out there, how does it impact things?
Well, Holy Cross is so used to playing on a grass field, and the field, when it gets wet like this, it just starts to play a little bit more like turf. Balls take off, they skip a little bit, and we saw Colgate on their last push into the box where Stutz was able to get to it around a couple of would-be attackers for the Raiders. Players are just going to need to acclimate themselves. We've seen some runs already today where players misjudged how they can lay a ball ahead, and basically by the second half, I think these guys will have all really figured it out, and we won't see quite so many of those too long touches that we've seen already.
DeLeo chasing after it for Colgate, cleared away by the goalkeeper, Stutz. He has played every single minute of action, more than 1,300 of them this year in net for Holy Cross, allowing 1.65 goals per game. Save percentage of .642 coming in for Stutz. Had to work hard in recent games with his team slumping a bit offensively. Foul there on Colgate. Crusaders coming into the game have played 111 minutes straight of scoreless soccer. They're looking to break through. They've been outscored 7-1 on this 3-game losing streak, so as that one gets knocked away by Mila Dragovic. Holy Cross trending in the wrong direction right now at the wrong time, but still time to go. This is one of 3 games left in the season. If the season ended right now, they're in that 3-way tie for 5th place, and they're right there in terms of playoff contention. And these next couple of games are key, given that they're the teams Holy Cross is tied with in the standings. It's sent towards the middle, gets through Ross, but nobody home to try to put it in on the back end for Colgate.
Going to be a throw-in for Holy Cross. Just about a minute ago, we did have our first lecture of the game being issued kind of behind the play. Freddy Johnson of Colgate was having a stern talking to, or the official, in fact, even stopped the clock for just a few seconds to make sure that Johnson got the message. Johnson undercut freshman Jacob Wright, who's making his 12th start in 15 games today for Holy Cross. So early on, a little bit of aggression, and in a day where we're talking weather, there's going to be some tender footing out there on the field, and for players to be crashing into one another, that only makes it that much more of a dangerous situation.
The safety concerns definitely amplified given the conditions. Pagani goes across the field for Colgate.
But as soon as we say that, Johnson comes away with the ball, had a really nice deft touch with it, but as he came down with it, he actually had a whole handful of RJ Place's jerseys, so maybe that sermon didn't land quite as well as the official had wanted.
Yeah, I think for a player in that situation, maybe you're listening. You show you're listening, but how much are you actually taking from those instructions? Maybe debatable in that type of situation. Callahan all the way across to RJ Place, the junior from West Hartford. I think we're seeing these conditions have an impact early on with players not always getting some clean contact on passes and plays like that.
Yeah, just sliding off his foot and Place, clapping his hands, kind of buried his head in the crook of his shirt as he walked away. So some certain frustration. You can certainly take a strike at a ball from that spot on the pitch, and if it winds up there and you feel like you've delivered a good blow to it, that's one thing, but obviously Place not pleased with how that ball came away.
Carl Brown battling Brummett on the Holy Cross side, and that will be out for a Colgate throw. The Raiders goalie is Peter Tappenden. He's a senior from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So just mention how Colgate had a 4-year starter in net last season. They replace him with a senior. Tappenden's played all but 2 games this year, 13 games played, 13 starts for Colgate, 1.6 goals against average, a .731 save percentage. He's posted 3 shutouts, the same exact number that Stutz has posted on the Holy Cross side. So a couple of capable goalies, if not dominant this season for their respective teams.
And Peter Tappenden, like you mentioned, he's a senior. Niraj Mahe, the junior from Danville, California, has made those other 2 starts. So presumably he's the guy that's going to be inheriting that role next year for Colgate.
Morrison the throw-in. Now the Raiders, who are heading from left to right in this first half across your screen, try to play it forward. That curls back in before it's just given a nice boot out by Mila Dragovic.
There are a couple other goalkeepers on the roster. Jacob Harris, a sophomore, Wilson Fitzgerald, a freshman. So it is a little unusual to see a team carry 4 goalkeepers, but they've actually got one at each class. So maybe that is part of the recruiting mentality where you've got a senior, a junior, sophomore, a freshman. You always keep it fresh in case you don't bank on one guy to be your guy for 4 years. They had the benefit of that for 4 years with their prior goalkeeper, but now it seems like they're filling in the gaps a little bit more year to year.
It was picked off by Kentaro Morrison, quickly taken back by Kafora on the Crusaders side. We mentioned offense has been hard to come by recently for Holy Cross. Only 12 goals on the season, well under 1 per game. Right now, working on a streak where in the last 3 matches only 1 goal. We'll see if they can break through. Yeah, this is taking into the corner, maybe perhaps outside of the camera view, which we apologize for. It's that way due to those weather issues, having the camera inside. It's chipped in and over. And a goal kick. The series history here, Colgate has definitely owned this series in this 7-14-6 record you're seeing there for the Raiders. Last 3 years, Colgate is 2-0-1, so 3 straight unbeaten streak for the Raiders as well. 2013 on the road was the last Holy Cross win. They won that one in overtime. The last Holy Cross home victory came back in 2009 in this series, although these teams have a tendency to play close ones. 3 times in the last 5 seasons when they've met up, they've gone to overtime.
And so far, early on, there's been no sign of an advantage either way. Teams coming in with that same conference record, but even if there were a little disparity, and we touched on some of the numbers where Colgate, slightly higher scoring offense, the weather conditions have neutralized that over the first 15 minutes already.
Well, it varies certainly in each individual game, but you always, it varies in terms of the length of time that it takes, but you always see some sort of feeling out process at the start of these matches, and I think we're seeing it last a while here in these conditions here today.
Well, and as much as they're trying to feel each other out, they're also still like a newborn giraffe, just trying to figure out what the field is going to do, what the wetness is going to do to the ball, to themselves, and even that strike by Place a few minutes ago, we saw that one glide way off the end of his foot. So really, for both of these teams, they've got a couple of things to feel out early on.
Hasn't been much. I'm not sure there's been a shot yet so far.
Unofficially on the scoreboard here, no, none has been recorded.
Yeah, so no shot so far. That kind of tells the story of what we've seen early on. Don't need to say much more than that to describe how things have gone. There's been no shots through more than 15 minutes of action.
I guess the most exciting thing we've seen over the first 15 minutes was the lecture.
There could be a chance for a shot right here. Turning back and forth, shooting and scoring on the first shot of the game is Chris DiPietro. The freshman from Carlsbad, California, at just 5'6", scores his first career goal to put Colgate out in front in this crucial game.
Well, that ball ping-ponging around in the box, and Stutz tried to be aggressive, but the ball got away from where he was trying to line it up, and really that was just one low, hard shot by DiPietro. And once it started heading towards frame, there wasn't much Stutz could do to react and try and keep it out of the back of the net.
That was out for a Colgate throw, and well, the participants in this one answered our sarcastic comments about the gameplay so far relatively quickly, I would say. Ask and receive is how that just occurred right there. 1-0 Colgate on the first shot of the game, about 16 minutes in.
And this is going to be an interesting game if one team takes a one-goal margin, no matter how it shakes out, into the latter portion where it would get to a point where you'd normally think about.
Oh, this is another chance right here. Nearly 2-0 Colgate. Freddy Johnson had a shot, but a great effort at the last instant by Holy Cross defensively.
And boy, that was a ball that was knocked away by Stutz. It was a pretty good opportunity there, and it didn't take much imagination to see this game suddenly swinging to 2-0. But the point being, if this remains a one-goal game into the second half, no matter how it swings, at a point in the game, maybe 20 minutes left, where you'd start to be more defensive-minded and take your foot off the gas, try and settle for the win, the conditions aren't going to really allow for that. Just with all it'll take is one glancing header the wrong way, one missed touch that gets away from somebody, and your defensive posture will suddenly turn into a breakout the other way.
There might be fewer technical offensive plays, but there's a larger possibility for just some defensive breakdowns and some wackiness to occur out here, given these conditions. That was a really nice slide tackle there from Justin Kafora, senior captain from Plainview, New York. All three captains on this Holy Cross team are second-year captains. So it's an established leadership crew. Part of the reason why they have overachieved this year, a team that was picked last in the conference preseason, and they're fighting for playoff positioning here. Problem is, recently for Holy Cross, getting down early, or at least giving up goals early, has been a major issue. This is now the 5th time in the last 6 games that the opponent has scored in the first 22 minutes of game action. For the first half of the first half against Holy Cross, they've been giving up goals at a high rate this second part of the season.
Well, and you know what it comes down to is not only giving up a goal and giving up that kind of early goal, but your offense not having the confidence to erase that kind of early margin.
Sent to the outside, Troy Mupen approaching, going to swing it in, and that time cleared away nicely on the back end.
You know, when you talk about what this scoring offense really means, we saw the numbers at the open, 0.86 goals per game. There are 205 Division I men's soccer programs, and that scoring rate ranks 180 out of 205 this season. So we're talking pretty far down in terms of teams this season, and you know, you fall down 1-0, you're not even averaging a goal per game this year.
Not a team that's necessarily built to make comebacks. They want to control the game and play a different type of style. That last defensive play was made by Jacob Wright, by the way, the freshman, and now, again, they give it to Johnson in a dangerous situation. He just sprays it offline. That's one thing. Sometimes you'll see maybe the defense tonight get away with some mistakes when it's just tough to square it up in these really soggy conditions.
Same vein, Johnson maybe doesn't need to be so careful about picking a corner. Just a hard shot on net, and it's not going to be as easy for Stutz to try and get a grip and control what would be a rebound under normal conditions.
Oh, so much of it, you have the goalie gloves, and it's very important for the goalie to be able to corral things and control things and feel comfortable, and it gets way more difficult in these wetter conditions. Thankfully, you know, they certainly, I'm sure, had a ton of practice, the goalies, in conditions like this. Everybody plays outside, plays some soccer in these conditions at some point, but it doesn't make it any easier, especially for those goalkeepers. Around the midway point in the first half. The difference in the game is the goal in the 16th minute by Chris DiPietro on the Colgate side. Max Kraus, not a ton of numbers, played ahead on the Holy Cross side, so taken back by Colgate. That DiPietro goal was an unassisted score. Chase Pagani has it knocked away by Kraus, and Kraus forces the turnover, the freshman from Korschenbroich, Germany, whose father Klaus was a 2-time national champ at the high school level in German soccer. All the way back to Tappenden, the senior goalie from Michigan on the Colgate side. Tappenden, just one game played as both a freshman and a sophomore. Only 2 games played last year. And has stepped into the starting role this year after only 4 career appearances in his freshman through junior seasons. Now Holy Cross starting to show some type of threat for the first time in a while here. It's Kraus laying it along the edge. Sent in a diving header attempt. Ball kept alive. And eventually the collision involving on the Colgate side DeLeo.
And it was Arno Rupp, who had his noggin right in the mix of things in the box for Holy Cross. He was trying to come up with his third goal in the last 2 matches.
And he scored the last 3 goals on the Holy Cross side. Again, lunges for that header. He has been the scoring threat in recent play for the Crusaders. So certainly you'd imagine Colgate mindful of that. That one captured momentarily by Stroud. And now up the wing to RJ Place and back for Callahan. Callahan sends it all the way across. Kraus ends up losing possession. And the 3-way tie for 5th between Army, Colgate, and Holy Cross. Colgate has already lost to Army this season. Holy Cross ends up playing Army next time out. That is a foul.
Yeah, we might get a booking here. We'll have to see, or just a lecture. It will be the first going against Holy Cross tonight. Had one going. Nope. We are going to get a booking. So yellow card goes up in the air for Lukas Milodragovic, and that is his first yellow card of the season, or his 3rd yellow card of the season. Actually, 2 of them coming in just the last couple of matches after he went the first 10 games or so of the year without one.
Holy Cross has got to be careful with some of these yellow cards. Brad Ross already had to miss a game with 5. Justin Kaffour right now sitting at 4, so he can't afford to pick one up. Otherwise, he's going to miss a key Patriot League game down the stretch. This is Stroud on the Colgate side. Jared Stroud is their leader in assists and points this season. 7 assists this year for Stroud. And he will attempt this free kick. Already up 1-0. Looking for one more. Headed away by Holy Cross defensively. Stroud, by the way, we were just talking about him. He took that free kick. 24 career assists. He's been doing this for a while. The senior from Chester, New Jersey. On the Raiders side, wearing maroon.
We talk about the 3 captains for Holy Cross all being in their second year of their captaincy. Well, Chase Pagani, Bruno Scudari, Jared Stroud, and Tim Oberg. It's a quartet of captains going out there for Colgate. And Stroud, of all those career assists, he's got 7 of them this season.
That's out for a Colgate goal kick. Stroud snapped a 4-game point streak when he didn't collect a goal or an assist in their loss against Lafayette on Saturday. Colgate's won 2 of their last 4 with victories over American and Bucknell. One of those losses was a non-conference defeat against Cornell. So you look back in the Patriot League, you actually go back to a 4-4 draw against Lehigh. 2-1-1 in the last 4 on the Colgate side. This time Stutz is racing over to go collect that. And like we talked about on Holy Cross, they've lost 3 straight and 4 out of 5. They had such a great start. For a time, we're right at the top of the league. And they're still exceeding expectations this year, but looking to salvage the season here in the last few games and deliver on that early promise and make the league tournament is the goal right now, definitely for both of these teams, but especially for Holy Cross, who hasn't seen a lot of that recent success that Colgate has.
Right, and when you are picked preseason as Holy Cross was, you can't go out into the year and say we want to shock the world and just win the league outright. Making that Patriot League tournament is a very feasible and attainable goal where, like you said, it's exceeding maybe the expectations that others have for you. It's kind of achieving what you believe that you're capable of, and it gives yourself a chance to make that 3-game run into the NCAA tournament.
Taken away by Stroud, the midfielder, dynamic player for Colgate. This is onside and a big gamble, and the right one by Stutz, getting out there just in time before sprinting back to his goal line.
He got there just outside of the 18, and so he was not able to pick it up. All he could do was boot it out over the sideline, and then he had to quickly turn on his heel and sprint back inside the box because a deep throw, if Colgate was ready and set up to do it, it could have been in a position where they had a waning open net behind Stutz.
Well, it wouldn't have been like that goal circulating that went viral online where the net was open on that penalty kick because the goalie was too busy celebrating. As this one gets headed over the top. Very close call once again. There's been times when Colgate's been very close to making this 2-0. That was Carl Brown, the defender in deep. That was a hilarious video. I think it sounds like, based on your reaction, that you saw that, where the goalie was celebrating the penalty kick that went off of the crossbar, and it spun back in somehow after launching into the air when the goalie was busy celebrating.
Went into the air, out of frame, and landed just right behind the PK dot. Just checked itself up. But the strangest thing is just that the goalie's celebration, he just sprinted out to midfield. If he just simply sat in goal and celebrated, I guess that's the viral nature of things. We wouldn't have been able to enjoy it as much as we have, and he wouldn't have been able to chagrin it as much as I'm sure he did.
Yeah, tough to blame him, though. I don't know that never mind having seen that. Couldn't even conceive of that happening. Definitely a play right there where the surface comes into play. Troy Mupen just slipping. And now Holy Cross comes away with it.
It's one of those plays that you couldn't conceive of in tonight's game with all the precipitation, the moisture on the field. The ball would never check up off a crossbar and spin back into the net like that.
Don't think we'll see that tonight.
Might see a ball spin awkwardly into the back of the net, but might be a glancing blow or something else a little unusual here tonight.
There are any number of possibilities of things we could see tonight. Don't worry, but not that. Not what we were just describing in that video from before. Kraus back to Kafora for the Crusaders. Now Jacob Wright. Dragovic to Kafora. Leads the team in minutes played. And one of two players to start every game. Justin Kafora, the 5'8" senior from Plainview, New York. High school teammates and classmates with Nicholas Sestero at St. Anthony's on the Holy Cross side. Rain is picked up here.
And based on the pattern of the rain, there really isn't much wind. It's a fairly vertical rainfall right now, maybe gently blowing at the back of Holy Cross from right to left, but we've seen some sideways rain at time, and it's not really much of a windy night, just wet.
Taken away by Wright. Couple of nice plays by him in recent sequences for the Crusaders. Now it is Kraus to UG Callahan. Sent out to the flank. RJ Place biding his time. Sending towards the middle and rejected by the heading Aram Uligian.
Then as it comes to the sideline, it gets a piece of place. He tried to knock it down about waist high with a cleat. Couldn't. Got away from him, and so Colgate comes up with this throw-in now.
There was a fistful of jersey for Jacob Wright that was right in front of us, and yet it's going the Holy Cross way. Although I think there was, in fairness to Wright, some pulling and grabbing on both sides. We happen to have the view of what we saw him do, but kind of went both ways there with him and Freddy Johnson. That's a fortuitous bounce. Kraus can't quite take advantage. Dueling headers. Crusaders, Adam, have started to pick up some steam offensively as this first half has gone along after surrendering the early goal.
Yeah, it seems like Place has
gotten
gotten involved.
Look out here first. Johnson, one on the goalie, and a save made by Stutz to keep Holy Cross in it.
That was a rain-aided carom that got away from the back line of the Crusaders. On a normal night, you expect you wouldn't see something like that, but We had Johnson get away from the back line, broke in, and Stutz aggressively able to deflect it away. But we do have our first corner kick of the night coming up.
It's a routine situation that turned almost disastrous. In the corner, it is Kentaro Morrison taking the kick for Colgate. Sent out in front, headed, and a goal! Colgate does go out in front 2-0 as it turns out, as the tally for Ulegian.
Well, we highlighted Ulegian in the open with him scoring the only goal in that last loss, a 2-1 defeat at Lafayette, and now Ulegian with his 5th goal of the year, scoring back-to-back contests. He's really been on a nice stretch lately, and he gets that pivotal 2nd goal, a 2-goal lead in soccer. It's always mentioned it's a tough one to try and overcome, and it's right now in the favor of Colgate Raiders.
The junior from Needham, Massachusetts, Aram Ulegian, with his 5th goal of the season. That now leads the team, and he's a defensive player for this Colgate team, at least in terms of how he's listed. His role more complex certainly than that. 2-0 Colgate. Now Morrison, head of steam, takes a deflected shot, another corner kick. Subbing in for the Raiders is Abdel Sanogo, junior from Plano, Texas.
It'll be Johnson checking off for the Raiders. He's put in a pretty good night's work. He's been all over the place, all over the map in the first 32 minutes of this one.
The assist was credited to Kentaro Morrison on that Ulegian score. It was Morrison taking the corner. Here he is again. Again, great job with the corner kick by Morrison, and this time the Raiders are unable to head that one in goal. Colgate looking to pour it on just like the rain right now coming down here in Worcester.
And boy, Colgate with a couple of corner kick opportunities late in this first half, and they look like they have that down to a science. First one came in for a goal. The other one bounced around in the box but found a friendly head. And so Holy Cross, they now need to relieve themselves of this pressure, get the ball in Colgate's half of the field, and even as they try, that pass is blocked away.
Well, normally you might say for Holy Cross with 11:30 to go in the first half, just try to do whatever you can to get into the locker room here, dry off a bit, and then regroup for the second half. But how important is it for Holy Cross to try and score? I would say is that's going to be clearly a foul on Rupp. A little bit of talking after the fact. When you're already down 2-0, how much should the Crusaders be trying to gun for a goal here to make this reasonable?
Well, I think the fact that Holy Cross hasn't been able to sustain any offense is one thing, but to still keep that opportunistic mindset where the second goal for Colgate was directly as a result of a rain-aided bounce that just got away from Holy Cross. So even if you're not feeling confident in your ability to structure an offense and you need to re-diagram some things at halftime, you can still keep it in your mind that, hey, if we get the ball, let's send some passes deep, let's make some runs and see if we can't sneak one past the defense and break in all alone on Tappenden.
Tim Oberg replacing Chase Pagani. That's on the Colgate side. Milodragovic coming out for Holy Cross. Tyler Bell enters. That's a bit of an offensive move right there. Bell swings between forward and midfield. Milodragovic is a back for Holy Cross. It's been steady. I wouldn't necessarily say quite torrential, but not that far off from that. Maybe that is the right adjective. It's been a downpour for sure.
It's always fun to hear two people try and describe the rain when they're sitting comfortably inside with a roof over their heads.
Yeah, don't worry. We are fine. These players out there, and the fans for that matter, that have made the trek over here.
Yeah, I would say torrential. Maybe we'll do a halftime interview. We'll go down and we got a couple people with umbrellas out in front of us, so we'll ask her, see if they're
just stay in here. That's another idea. Either way.
Yeah, I think I'll do the latter.
I mean, yours sounds good, but just giving you a second option.
Well, here's that bounce, perhaps, for Holy Cross.
Colgate unhappy about the call.
Holy Cross unhappy as well. We're going to get a stoppage on the clock and a booking.
That's a card for Kentara Morrison.
For Morrison, that is his third yellow card of the season in 11 contests. And that was a bounce that just had gotten away from Colgate, and it was resulting in a 3-on-3 rush. And maybe that is a card that, when you look back on it for Colgate, you figure, all right, well, if we're going to give one up, you might as well thwart what would have been and was developing into one of the best offensive opportunities of the night for Holy Cross.
Kafora kind of slipped trying that long ball off of the free kick. Now here's Kraus playing it ahead, and that's deflected by Callahan off of a Colgate defender into a corner kick. As the rain really picks up even more.
I'd say torrential.
I would definitely agree. Corner kick for the Crusaders, and the Crusaders score. Arno Rupp with his 4th goal in a row for Holy Cross. It's been him the last 4 times this team has scored. The senior from Austria with his team-high 6th of the year.
And it just doesn't take much on a night like this. You get that bounce that gets away from Colgate, then all of a sudden a set piece develops for Holy Cross. That results in a corner kick, and then a masterfully done corner kick with a header to finish it off for Arno Rupp.
It's just too slick for the goalies to be as effective as they usually are. And Crusaders using those conditions to their advantage. It looks like whoever can collect the most corner kicks, the better, because there's been some danger on both sides on their corner kicks. Colgate scored once, nearly scored again, and then Holy Cross gets one on a corner.
And I think that makes Holy Cross feel a little bit better about the second goal that they gave up, where the corner kick only resulted from that miscue on the last line of the defense. Again, rain aided. So we're seeing a couple of plays definitely affected. You know, the first goal of the game was a wonderfully clean finish, but I think we're starting to see the conditions really deteriorate and affect what's happening out there on the pitch, and that'll only continue into the second half.
As long as it stays torrential, it's not going to help the conditions out there on the field. Under 7 minutes to go in the first half. Holy Cross has made this a game again. Callahan on the move. Looking for a touch pass to Rupp, who does track it down shy of the goal line. Now back for Bell. Looking to ring the bell for Holy Cross as it's put off to the side. A throw in for the Crusaders. Tyler Bell has a goal and an assist this season, by the way, the junior who just checked in from Mendham, New Jersey, and Del Barton in high school. Callahan deep inside the box. Cleared away over to Sanogo. Abdel Sanogo, the junior from Texas who just came into this as a sub for Colgate, number 9. Has relatives Yaya Sanogo, who played for the France U21 team and Arsenal for 4 years. And Boubacar Sanogo made 21 appearances and scored 8 times for the Ivory Coast national team. Sanogo, American-born, but very talented, somewhat distant relatives, I believe, in international soccer that share his last name.
Yeah, not bad bloodlines to have, and that Ivory Coast, you know, it doesn't always come up, maybe if you're watching the news, but in terms of being a power in international soccer, the Ivory Coast does pop up on occasion, and you know, for a particularly small country in Africa, they do represent themselves really, really well on an international soccer stage.
Yeah, he's eight career goals for that team for one of Sonogo's relatives, Boubacar, and that's, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's an impressive team to have on your resume in addition to his professional career. About 5 minutes to play here in the first. Impressive touch by Brummett. Looking to head it in was Rupp. Still loose inside the box before it's finally sent out of there by the Raiders, looking for a counterattack. That's way out of the reach of Sonogo.
That last opportunity in the box for Holy Cross, Arno Rupp was working one-on-one. He couldn't get ahead on it, and then Yuji Callahan was squeezed to the ground between a double team. So for Callahan, in the box, you're really never going to get that call, especially, but there was no call to be made. It was simply just out-muscled by a couple of Colgate Raiders.
Rupp's got some teammates. He'll play it back for himself, though, and now just try direct, and that's just going to be tough to do tonight. I think the long-distance shots, these players have not really found it natural to control the ball from way out beyond the 18.
No, and I think, again, if you're able to get it on frame, any ball that heads in the direction of goal tonight, if you're the team that's taking the shot, you're holding your breath because there's no telling what's going to happen. We haven't seen a real miscue or a mishandle yet by either goalkeeper with all the things we're discussing.
That one handled by Tappington.
And, but it is not a bad idea to try a long shot and just say, all right, let's see if we can make something happen in this way tonight, the way that you're just sort of taking a shot in the dark with a couple of long balls that wouldn't normally connect on a nice night of weather, but they've worked so far tonight.
Well, it seems like what could work well tonight, we've sort of noticed that based on the corner kicks, maybe some long crossing passes, through ball attempts. Perhaps on a free kick like this, try and send it off somebody's head would be the play a lot of the time, or just do what Colgate just did, the quick restart. Punched away inside by Stutz.
Nicely done, but it is still alive for the Raiders as they try and reset their offense.
Colgate with another opportunity seemingly until it's blasted away.
That was R.J. Place who went down in the box. It looked like it was
Kafora with the big clear.
Yeah, and R.J. Place, who was a little slow to get up, that's where the stoppage came from. But he does seem to be all right. Yeah, he and Kafora both converged, trying to do everything they can to keep that one out of the net.
Carl Brown with a big pass up the sideline for Colgate. Brown, a former high school lacrosse player who goes the distance in many games for Colgate, reliable on the back end. 6'3" senior from Silver Spring, Carl Brown. Turned over there off the foot of Kafora. Now with 90 seconds to go in the first half. Also sort of analyzing this impact of the weather. Anytime on plays like that, when that ball starts to skid away, it's just tough along the sidelines for players to track much down unless it's just a perfect touch pass on those long distance balls. Send through to the far side, set up for now for Kraus, but he loses control of it.
1 minute to go in the first half.
Omaragbe pushed it to the near side. Now Troy Mupen working his way through multiple defenders, finally held up. And now Bell back the other way for Holy Cross. and taken down. We'll foul on Colgate with 40 seconds to go. See how the Crusaders approach this. Certainly have the time to make one more rush. Bell deflects it for the Crusaders. Taken in by Oberg on the Raiders side. DeLeo looking to dribble through. Held up there by Place. Place does enough to stall DeLeo to cancel out the rest of this first half. Looked very dire for the Holy Cross Crusaders, but they get a bounce-back score from Arno Rupp to give them a chance in the second half. 2 early goals from Colgate, but Holy Cross not quite done yet here at halftime.
Right, and to be down 2-0 going into half, that's certainly one thing. To be down just a goal going into halftime, that can totally change your mentality. And we were talking about at times where Holy Cross, they want to get into halftime to be able to discuss ways to rebuild their offense. The plan of attack just simply did not work in the first half. Colgate owned the advantage in shots unofficially here. It reads 8-2. And, Holy Cross needs to make some adjustments.
2-1, Colgate over Holy Cross here at the half. The second half on the way shortly on the Patriot League Network on Stadium. It's the start of the second half here in Worcester. The Holy Cross Crusaders against the Colgate Raiders alongside Adam Giardino, AJ Cannell on the Patriot League Network on Stadium. 2-1, Colgate leading Holy Cross at the moment, and Raiders certainly control the majority of that first half.
Yeah, they sure did. 8 shots for Colgate, outshooting Holy Cross 8-2. And when you're up 2-1 at the half and you've got that 8-2 advantage in shots as well, it's a pretty clear indicator of just how thoroughly you are outplaying the opponent.
We have some score updates with all these teams packed closely together in the standings. Here's a look at the standings as they are right now. Little update that you're going to see in the scores. Doesn't really change the standings as compared to where they were when the night began, but all those teams packed so closely together. The 3-way tie between Army, Colgate, and Holy Cross. And now to take a look at the score updates. Bucknell beating Lehigh does not change the Bison, their spot in the standings. It stays exactly the same for now, but it certainly does reassure them of their placement in the Patriot League standings heading towards the postseason tournament. And then that BU Army game was still going on, but certainly good for both Colgate and Holy Cross to see Army losing. And Loyola and Navy both out in front. The fact that Army, American, and Lafayette are all losing is definitely a good thing for both of these teams. In particular, they're tied with Army, and right now BU has that 2-0 lead.
Right, you're talking about 4 games out of town that these teams are looking at, and if these teams had a say in how things would go, 3 of the 4 games are going the way that they want it to go, and the only game that didn't was that game that went final. But of the 4 games, that Bucknell-Lehigh game is the one that was kind of least significant. You kind of have those 4 teams, Loyola, BU, Lehigh, and Bucknell. They're sort of just a little bit out of arm's reach, especially after that result tonight. So the other 3 games that are still in action, those are exactly the way that both of these teams want them to go.
That Bucknell-Lehigh game, started early, started 6 o'clock, so that's why that one wrapped up. The other 3, same exact 7 o'clock start time as this one, so they'll go according to the same timeline, and certainly those scores could change just like in this game. We will keep you updated, make sure that before we end this broadcast tonight, because all these teams are so tight together in the standings, you know exactly what happened out of town with those other scores, and you can certainly, of course, check out the Patriot League website as well for more updates on that. This is one of the final 3 games remaining for both Colgate and Holy Cross in the first half. 2 straight Colgate goals in the 16th and 32nd minutes from Chris DePietro unassisted, and from Aram Uligian, assisted by Kentaro Morrison and his corner kick, and then Arno Rupp from Max Kraus off of a Holy Cross corner kick in the 38th minute for the Crusaders to make this a game again going into the second half. That's where we stand right now as the second half has just gotten underway with Adam Giardino, A.J. Cannell once again here at Linda Johnson Smith Soccer Stadium in Worcester.
And they're going to blow the whistle and pause the clock. And there may have been an inadvertent arm, or there was some jockeying. There was a lot of contact. Didn't seem like an arm necessarily got up around the head of a Colgate player, but went down and started rolling around as if there had been some contact. So we're going to have to wait and see if there's a booking coming. And I'm not terribly surprised that we're about to get one. It'll be the third of the night if we do.
We have one per side in the first half, and that was Chase Pagani who was shaken up.
And it's a delayed one, but, yeah, it does come out eventually for Nicholas Sestero, which is his first of the year.
Again, there are some players in this game, especially on the Holy Cross side, that really don't want to see themselves booked again. In particular, Justin Kafora, who has 4.
Even, we were dissecting the potential elbow, the arm coming up for Sestero, but even short of that, there was enough contact to certainly warrant that yellow card coming out.
See if the Crusaders can try and match this score or do better than that in the second half. Well, if Army ends up losing and these teams end up tying, not sure either team would be that upset with the result. Usually teams despise a tie. But if that's the way things played out, maybe both teams would be okay with that. Of course, right now the Raiders looking to protect that 1-goal lead.
Right, it would result in both of those teams being that team on the inside of the cut line. It's a 3-way tie, 5th, 6th, and 7th place. And like you said, Army not in a spot to take home any points tonight, so that a tie would work just fine for both groups here tonight.
I mean, right now that is we don't want to treat that as a certain thing, but the last time we checked, it was a 2-0 lead for BU, who's right there at the top of the conference, heading into the second half against Army. So that would be a surprise if that changed, although it is in West Point.
It feels like the way that the first half wound up, it was both teams, the offensive chances were basically teams both ways just trying to force the ball downfield and I don't want to say just get lucky, but put the onus and the impetus on the opponent to kind of make a mistake and force a ball that either skipped away or got away, something that we wouldn't normally see on a nice night for soccer, but it's anything but what we've drawn up for a nice night for soccer.
Not as many opportunities for precision on a night like this. Stroud kicked away by Wright. Opportunistic defensive play, but then brought back in by Stroud on the Colgate side. Raiders looking to mount something here. A little bit of space there for DePietro, who has already scored. Good possession right now for the Raiders. It's tough to keep the possession as well in these conditions along the lines of Adam's last point.
Temperatures have dipped to the mid-50s tonight, which is actually a bit chillier than what we've been used to, but by and large for October 25th on a wet late October night in Worcester, Massachusetts, this is still unseasonably warm for a little after 8 o'clock.
That's been the case all month, unseasonably warm. It's been still really wet conditions out there. Around halftime, the rain lightened up a bit. It's still a steady rain, but it's much lighter than we saw at its worst in the first half. But this field will be soaking wet for the remainder of this game. The conditions, even if the rain completely lets up, the conditions aren't going to change too much. Although I'm sure this is at least a little bit better than what we saw when it was in torrential form in the first half.
Yeah, I'd say we're no longer quite there.
We're not categorizing this as torrential after all the debate in the first half.
I'm really pleased with that color-coded sheet that you drew up at halftime so we could be on the same page with what level of rain we're experiencing from moment to moment.
Scudari. Now Colgate comes away with it after it was actually Eddie Muhan, number 3 on the Holy Cross side, that's seen some more playing time in recent action. Legion back to the near side for Carl Brown. And now DePietro for the Raiders. A nice weaving move by Chris DePietro. He's bumped out by Callahan. No foul called, so it's just a Holy Cross throw.
And does Holy Cross take some momentum out of halftime? They trailed 2-0. Now they're down just the 1 goal. It's a 2-1 margin right now for the Crusaders. They need to know that in the back of their minds, goals have been hard to come by for them this year. So we've talked about it. They've come in averaging fewer than a goal per game. And right now they're trying to play with some house money and run downhill with the ball a little bit, given that they've scored that most recent goal. There's still 37 minutes in the clock, and they'll try to make something out of it.
It's like a downhill play right here, but Kraus had his pass knocked away. That is offsides on the back end for Steven DeLeo, who, like many of the players that have come up through Massachusetts over the years, he played for the FC Boston Bolts of the U.S. Soccer Developmental Academy. There are definitely some others in this game that can say that. DeLeo from Acton, Massachusetts, Acton-Boxborough High School. This is Troy Mupen for the Raiders. Legion back to Mupen. Definitely a contrast between the end of the first half and the start of the second half. Much quieter here in the second so far, but some good subtle plays for Colgate, and now they set up DeLeo. Maybe RJ Place races in between him and the goalie. Place slides in for that tackle, and then ends up recovering once again to limit the damage. Guarding Jared Stroud there, who made that second rush at the end for Colgate.
But it does feel like that was the first threatening opportunity for Colgate. Both these teams in that first half were feeling each other out early. We partially chalked it up to the teams not having a great feel for how the ball was going to react on the wet surface. But still, like you just mentioned, AJ, just not quite that big burst out of halftime like we were really seeing over the final 10 minutes of the first half.
Game really opened up at that point. Colgate foul. We mentioned in the first half the Raiders are the defending Patriot League champions. And they certainly have a history as a program within this Patriot League conference. 6 Patriot League tournament championships and NCAA tournament appearances for the Colgate Raiders, and 4 times under their current head coach, Eric Ronning. 07, 08, 2011, and 2016. They won the Patriot League championship in each of those years. The last 2 years, the first time winning 10 in a row, or excuse me, the first time collecting 10 wins on the season in back-to-back years since the 1991 and 1992 years. So as good as the program has been, Ronning has just continued to elevate the program more and more.
And that is really where he got the benefit of the doubt as we talk about the Patriot League preseason coaches poll, the standings, where they were picked second.
This is a deep throw, not a corner kick. I know it's tough to see for the viewers over there into the corner right now. So just to clarify, it's Stroud throwing it in, headed towards the middle where there is a battle for it Holy Cross claiming a deflection, and that's the call they receive.
And just back to that point with Ronning and all the goodwill that he's built up around the league, where you graduate some real top-flight talent from last year's very successful Colgate team. You just assume that the recruiting stays up, that these guys that graduated are helping train the players that will eventually replace them on the roster. And it's been a little tougher of a transition than maybe some folks in the Patriot League expected, but there's no doubt with what we've seen and saw at points already in this game that there is a whole lot of talent there from guys that aren't necessarily seniors, so this is a team that'll be back for more next year, regardless of how this one winds up.
This is blocked back by Sestero for Holy Cross, the senior from Massapequa, New York. Now Rupp plays it towards the outside. Bell leaping over a defender to corral it. 2-1 Colgate. Holy Cross looking for that equalizer. Kafora with a late delay right there. I think just gets a warning from the referee, Adam Kilpatrick. And we mentioned Kafora's the one that's one yellow away from that 5 that would knock him out for a game. And he's their leading minutes getter this season. That was close right there.
I don't know if you would see a yellow card, especially the way that this game has been so physical, that something like that would draw a yellow card, but certainly whistle had blown. Kafora chose to ignore it, selective hearing, whatever it may be, and that will get you a talking to every time.
Well, certainly that would not be the way you'd want to pick up your 5th.
No.
Didn't end up happening, and as you said, probably the right decision by the referee in that case. Now Jared Stroud, the leading scorer this year for Colgate. Interesting play, he chips it forward. The back line answering it for Holy Cross. Picked up by DePietro to gain possession again for Colgate. DePietro now weighing his options, going to go back, which is always risky. We've seen teams do less and less of that and almost never pass to the goalie with these conditions. Crusaders gave away a breakaway, and there was a great save by Stutz to avoid a goal in that situation. That time it was out of Stutz's reach, but it would not be placed home by the Raiders, and it was a very good attempt. Prime opportunity for DeLeo.
Yeah, Stutz got a piece of it. He flicked it to DeLeo on the way by, who was trying to size it up one way, and that deflection was what forced DeLeo to try and react and couldn't quite put it on net. But boy, that wound up being a really good opportunity for Colgate to regain their 2-goal advantage.
There's definitely been some opportunities for this to be worse from the Holy Cross perspective. So they have to be feeling fortunate for it to be 2-1, but they've generated some more opportunities of their own as the game has gone along, and they have a chance here in this second half. All the way through to Stutz.
Given that we're almost a third of the way, 15 minutes into the second half, the game had started to shift towards Colgate. It took a while for Colgate to kind of shake off the cobwebs, about 9 minutes without them really imposing themselves in the second half. But now the last 6 minutes or so have belonged to the Raiders.
These teams have identical conference records coming in, but Colgate has been playing better lately. Crusaders have been slumping, losers of 3 straight coming in. That's a miscommunication there and a turnover, but back to the foot of Ross. Holy Cross looking to make their first Patriot League tournament since 2013 and just their second appearance in the postseason tournament in the last 9 years. If they can qualify this year, this would be a big boost forward for this program if they can win the majority of these last few games and gain entry into the tournament, as Kraus looking to make that deflection for a corner kick. It's saved along the goal line. And every corner kick could result in a goal, the way things have been trending here today. And that was a very important save by Legion.
Yeah, the last couple have resulted in goals. The second goal for Colgate to make it 2-0, and now the goal that has brought Holy Cross back to within a goal. That those are both coming off those set pieces. So.
And there's been 4 corner kicks in the game, 3 for Colgate, 1 for Holy Cross, and half of those have resulted in a goal. Would it necessarily continue at that rate? Not trying to say that. That would be pretty impressive, but corners have not been easy to come by, though when the teams have gotten that chance, they've cashed in 50% of the time. Goes through Callahan, but right there to Muhan. Now the Crusaders extending the possession with a good sequence on their side. See what Ross decides to do. Just slides it through to Callahan. Gains the middle of the field, but unable to find a teammate. UG Callahan's brother Junta is a freshman on the Valparaiso soccer team, and his dad Michael played at St. Michael's, the Division II team in the Northeast 10.
No relation.
Appreciate you clarifying that. I was confused.
I don't think that's how that works.
UG Callahan hails from Okinawa, Japan. So certainly, we just mentioned, not the only one in his family to have experience playing in the States.
And not the only one in this game. Kentaro Morrison, also from Japan, from Tokyo. Not often are you able to see that, where 2 different teams are drawing a player from Japan. It's not particularly an international hotbed in the United States for collegiate soccer. Certainly you see the international flavor come through, and whether that's Germany or whether that's Sweden, but you've got Jamaica on Colgate as well. But
Troy Mupen,
yeah,
is Jamaican, but played some prep soccer at the Taft School in Connecticut. There's a foul going Holy Cross's way. It was Callahan getting tripped up. I think that always helps for players coming in, international players, in whatever sport you're speaking about. When you see somebody get a year or two, maybe beforehand at the high school level playing in the States, they get pretty comfortable at that point being here, and it's not as much of a concern, homesickness and questions of that sort, the culture barrier. I've seen guys certainly get through it either way, but certainly makes the adjustment process easier when you played a couple years in the States at the level below.
Well, and especially when you're talking Patriot League competition, for guys to come over, any athlete to come over from international, and especially if it's not English first language, the academic rigors of the Patriot League are such where, I mean, it's really hard to imagine trying to navigate a student athlete schedule on top of also just trying to navigate the academics in the Patriot League, which the average student has a hard enough time to manage anyway, and then it's not even in your first language.
Yeah, I mean, you picture, for those that are listening, watching, that attended college, recall what that was like, going away from their family for the first time for many people if they're going to a school away from home, and everything they had to deal with academically, socially, and then imagine doing all that and you're in a new country for the first time. And you have the full rigors of a athletic schedule. That's a crazy adjustment compared to the normal student.
Right, you can't just go back to your dorm room and give away a couple of hours by, hanging out and Skyping with your friends back home. You've got practice, you've got academics, you've got all this stuff. I mean, you try to make time for it, but yeah, it's a real tip of the cap for when you look up and down these rosters on any of the athletic teams, Holy Cross or otherwise in the Patriot League. It's really an impressive feat when you consider the grand scope of it.
When you think about all the work that these players put in on the field, off the field, it's why you get to this time of year for these seniors, and they want to get to the postseason and make all their hard work pay off throughout their careers, as that got sent through. But a goal kick for Holy Cross and Henry Stutz, who's a junior from Cincinnati, Ohio. Stutz has made 2 saves. The Colgate goalie, by the way, Peter Tappenden, has not had to make a save yet. He's allowed 1 goal, but without making a save, his team is still out in front by a goal. Whoa.
We might see a little
I think
action
that's,
behind the play.
well, first of all, you locate who that is that took the punishment on the Colgate side. That's Morrison.
I think it's Johnson.
Or Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson in the box, who I don't think the reason that Johnson went down, and it was a little behind afterwards, but it seemed like the ball got up above the shoulder of Johnson, but then when Johnson was on the ground, there was a little bit of contact as well.
We saw him basically reach back and grab the ankle of the Holy Cross player on purpose once he was on the ground. Even though it looked like the major source of the pain was the ball, like you said. It was sort of surprising to see him reach back in frustration like that all the way behind the plate. So that's where the whistle came from. Freddy Johnson, the senior from Gothenburg, Sweden, who has scored a goal in 2 of the last 3 games coming in for Colgate and also has scored in 3 of the last 5, former junior Swedish national team member. He's a transfer from UConn, so he came over from a different country and also switched schools during his collegiate career. Played about half of this second half, and Holy Cross is still looking for the equalizer and looking to stave off any chances for Colgate to extend the lead. Callahan going long distance right here. Looking for Sestero. It curved away from him. And in position for the Colgate defense to dispose of it for the time being. Bell to Rupp and back to Bell. See what Tyler Bell can do with this one. Looking to generate the corner kick, and he is able to. We talked about the dangers of the corner kick for both teams defensively. Already 2 corner kick goals, 1 per team. This is just the second Holy Cross corner, and they scored on their first.
Kraus is to tee it up. He's the one that set up Arno Rupp for the first one.
Only really 1 player back for Holy Cross. Very aggressive right now on this corner. A number of players stacked around the goal line itself. Looks like Kraus is really going to try to bend this one in, and they get the goal. It is Eddie Muhan for the Crusaders to even the game. And he slides into his celebration.
How about that? 2 corner kicks and a couple of goals so far tonight for the Crusaders. The set pieces have worked to perfection tonight, and that is Muhan's first goal of the season and is a freshman first career goal.
He's been a boost this second half of the season, playing in his 6th game of the year for Holy Cross, the freshman from Revere, Massachusetts, nearby. Only 184 minutes as a sub coming in, but he did play 40 minutes in a recent game against American, just played a couple of minutes in the loss against Loyola last time out, getting an extended look at the start of this second half, placed in there by Marco Kuhlman, and he makes his head coach's decision pay off. The 2-time Division II National Coach of the Year, Coach Kuhlman, previously had stops at Franklin Pierce where they won a D2 national title and Gannon University, and that is a tie-up, a tangle-up between Yuji Callahan and Jared Stroud.
And the way that this one has been so tightly officiated, both players go to the ground and you can kind of see them freeze, not wanting to make one false move. And
was that Division I soccer or a game of Twister going on in the ground right there in front of us?
I guess the wheel landed on whole body green.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't recall that being a part of the game, but
No, that's what I mean.
you know what? Never mind. Actually, it rings a bell. I'll have to go home and look again after the game is over. A whole body wet probably as well
right.
for both of those guys.
I mean, we've long foregone that hope of any of these players coming out of this with anything but soaking wet.
Now Stroud with some time and space inside, played out in front, and Colgate can't get one on goal. Chris DiPietro is able to at least gain the corner kick for his team, and well, usually a corner kick is as good as a goal. 5 corners, 3 goals thus far. Stroud is going to tee this up. That is in the net, but a whistle, and it looks like...
Yeah, that's being waved off.
I think it's waved off.
Went direct to goal. It glanced off of Stutz from what we could see.
I think it went off of Stutz, then off of a player, then in, I thought. But it's moot, as you were talking about.
Wow, how about that? That's a break for Holy Cross, and Colgate's sideline is going to get an explanation, and let's see if they're appeased by it.
I just thought it was a foul elsewhere off the ball is what was my best guess. I mean, needless to say, Eric Ronning is not happy.
Well, Ronning, and it's hard for us to really gauge what that conversation was about, but Ronning starts pointing back at his goal to the right, and I think if what you're saying is correct, he's probably saying, okay, well then let's keep an eye on Holy Cross stacking 8 players in the box and creating all sorts of contact on our keeper while that last corner kick unfolded.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it nearly went directly in. I mean, that was headed that way. I thought, Stutz made a deflection, then it went off of the body maybe of somebody from Colgate and in, but then the foul was called just from elsewhere. That was another brilliant corner kick set up by Stroud, and it was very close to being another corner kick goal, which would have been our 4th goal off of a corner kick in the game. It was a foul away from being in that category, as this one's hauled in by Tappenden for Colgate. I mean, just the point gets stronger and stronger that if you're playing defensively, you can't afford to give up a corner kick.
Absolutely not. And, we're 70 minutes in, 20 minutes to go, and this one feels like sometimes you get in this situation, this sort of time crunch, and you feel like, oh, maybe both teams will cruise into overtime, especially given the magnitude with this being a conference game, but it really feels like this one's going to have a 3rd goal for somebody before this regulation winds up.
Well, still 2-0 BU over Army in the 75th minute. So if these teams were both to come out of here with a draw as a part of this 3-way tie between these 2 squads and Army, they would both move up in the standings over Army and be cemented in those last 2 spots in the standings for now. They would both be moved up in the standings, although I guess part of it does depend on what the teams directly below them do as well. This was loose in the box. So actually, let's not take my word for that yet, because it depends what a couple of those 2 and 4 teams do as well. So many teams that are so close together.
Everything's so tightly bunched. The one thing that we have a pretty good grasp on is the top 4 teams with the way things shook out tonight. Bucknell improving to 4-3 with their win in conference play. That is just about going to put them out of reach. So the top 4 teams feel like are in pretty solid footing heading into the final 2 matches of the year.
Last couple spots, though, up for grabs. Both of these teams are tied as a part of that competition. Tappenden, with what wound up being an unnecessary dive, was able to haul it in aside of the goal. I mean, at the very least, he's got to make sure, but.
And the critical thing for Tappenden, though, is he made that sprawling effort. Was as soon as he got a piece of it and the ball sort of got away, he's got to make sure that it doesn't glance off of him and become a corner kick.
That was sort of my point. He nearly turned it into something it didn't need to be, but, of course, better safe than sorry a lot of the time for the goalkeeper. We talked about at the very start of this game, it was extremely tame. It took more than 15 minutes for a shot on goal. But then once it rained, it poured, literally, figuratively, because the very first shot on goal was a score for DiPietro. Now we have a foul called, and we'll sort through this as now both teams are starting to take some issue with what's been going on in the different calls. And Colgate's upset, but they're the ones that are going on this free kick.
They get the set piece, and, you know, we got a card being given, but it really seemed like, if anything, by committing this foul, that they actually put Colgate in a better position to get a look at goal. It was just a cross-field run with a couple of defenders in his way, and now Colgate gets to draw one up as they please.
Jared Stroud, who nearly scored direct off of the corner kick, has a much better angle right now if he chooses to go direct, which you would imagine would be the case from this type of spot. He lofts it in, and getting upturned was Stutz before punching it, sort of in the process of punching it out across the goal line. No foul call, even though he got run into a bit in the mix down there. Instead, a corner kick for Colgate.
It'll be Stroud to set it up, an outswinger with the right foot from that far corner.
Every corner kick has been so dangerous. Here is Stroud's latest one. Stutz is aggressive that time. A really smart move given how things have gone for both teams on these corner kicks.
But don't discredit Stroud, because that was another beautiful setup into a dangerous spot. And we've got a dangerous takedown for Holy Cross. Got a player down on that far sideline.
I think that was Kraus writhing in pain down there in the corner. It's a little tough to see because it's all the way down. They're calling for the trainers to come out right now. And a reminder of what's coming up for the Crusaders.
Yeah, they've got a couple of games to end the season. Holy Cross with a game wrapping up the year at Army. That'll be on Sunday at 6:05, and then on Saturday, November 4th, they've got one against Lehigh right here, Senior Day, to wrap it up at the 1:05 start. Both of those can be found on the Patriot League Network on Stadium, and then we've got the maybe 3 Patriot League tournament games coming up.
We talked about how close by these teams are to each other in the standings that are all packed tightly together. And right now, the Bucknell-Lehigh game was from earlier. That went final. The BU Army game is now in the second half, but still that score is correct. It's 2-0. And then the other scores, those are positive results for both of these teams. That Navy is beating Lafayette, and that American is also losing in addition to Lafayette.
You don't want to speculate at what's the matter with the player walking off. It's hard to get a good look, but it's going to be upper body. There's not much of a limp, but certainly it seems as if the right arm, right shoulder might be what could be the matter. The left arm swinging just fine.
So it is Kraus.
And again, based on what we can see, it seems to be a right side upper body injury.
Here's a free kick for Colgate, a chance to take the lead again. That time, not much on it, as Stutz has become more and more reliable as the night has gone along for Holy Cross. They're really taking the precautions with Kraus. He's walking gingerly, slowly, having that arm, shoulder area held up, walking back towards the Holy Cross bench. Kraus, in his 12th game of the year, he started about half of those, has a goal this year as a freshman from Germany, has been a key player in that midfield group.
Kraus has the assist tonight on the very first goal where he's got the assist on both goals actually tonight, setting up the set pieces. So suddenly that corner kick situation, it suddenly falls into somebody who's perhaps just as capable. We're not really, frankly, sure who it is, because when the moment comes, it always turns to Kraus to be that guy to take those corner kicks.
It's a good point. Just the production tonight alone from Kraus, getting his first 2 assists of his career tonight as a freshman.
The entire Holy Cross team, as much as we've talked about goals being hard to come by, strangely enough, assists have been particularly hard to come by for Holy Cross this year. As the Crusaders, they come in and they've scored 12 goals entering tonight. Only 3 assists, though, for the Crusaders coming in, which actually is second to last in the country. Just 9 of their 12 goals have been unassisted coming in, but, well, from 3 assists now up to 5 assists as a team this season.
Well, it's amazing how they've, just with the 2 assists from Kraus tonight, he now leads the team in assists just by getting the 2 of them, and he's nearly doubled up their assist production on the season.
With under 15 minutes to go in regulation, it's a little bit of a time for Holy Cross to reassess when you just lose a guy in Kraus that has been and really is such a strong part of what you do offensively, and especially here tonight. You know, that's emotionally there's always a little bit of a piece there, but tactically you've got to make sure that the guys you're plugging in are going to do their job over the final however long we've got left in this one, 15 minutes of regulation and perhaps into overtime.
Holy Cross again looking for their first home win against Colgate since 2009. Will it go to overtime for the 4th time in 6 years when these teams have met up? This is becoming, already has been a trend, going to extras when these teams are facing each other. Callahan up ahead to Barsic, making a nice move. Bobby Barsic. And those types of passes have been hard to come by in terms of finding a rhythm on that type of play for both teams tonight. That was a very nice slide tackle by Eddie Muhan, but not getting the call that the coaching staff was looking for. Looked like we saw it right in front of us. I think there was a deflection at the end.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be much question from the angle that we had, and we probably had about as good a view as anybody in this entire facility, but it seemed to go off of Johnson, but Colgate will try to capitalize now on the possession.
Yeah, the problem was everybody up here on the sidelines and up here in the stands and in the booth, we had a better view than the refs in that case. But Holy Cross with it now for the moment. Brummett is fouled. That touch back into play by Justin Kafora. Here on the Patriot League Network on Stadium with Adam Giardino, A.J. Cannell. Been a fun back-and-forth game. And sliding out to make the stop was Tappenden, but this one is still in play. He races back to his goal. Both goalies not trying to mess around as this game has gone along, being ultra aggressive, not leaving things up to chance with all these weird bounces. With it being so wet out there, this rain has nearly completely died down. It's an extremely light mist right now, though the field is still soaking wet because it was pouring for much of the night. Johnson racing after it. Again, aggressive out is Stutz, making the necessary play that time for Holy Cross.
Nice job by Jacob Wright. Kind of make sure he stayed between Johnson, the ball, and Stutz that entire time as it was skipping downfield.
Again, Barsic, a nice play, busting through, has a chance to take one, instead lays it off, and a sliding save by Tappenden once again. He got there to reject Bell. You're wondering as he's coming over, is he making the right choice, leaving his goal line open like that? But Tappenden, it looks like the aggressive approach is the right one tonight for the goalies.
We're going to get a stoppage on the clock, a player cramping up for Colgate. And it's Chase Pagani, their senior captain, who will limp off after he was being stretched out. And a fresh-legged Tim Oberg, a junior captain, charges off the bench.
Oberg, junior from Bethesda, Maryland, Sidwell Friends School. He's been more of a reserve at times this year after starting all but 4 of the games in his first 2 years. Does have an assist this year. Corner kick that does not result in a goal. Imagine that for Holy Cross. Callahan gets taken out, but a clean tackle is the call. And no argument from the Holy Cross side. Nice diving header by Place. This has become a fun game. Moment of uncertainty there before finally Clark just boots it away.
And for Place to make that diving header, let's consider what the result is if he's not able to get that cleanly, and if it either misses him entirely or glances backwards. There's not much back there for Holy Cross, as Colgate would have tried to force the issue downfield. Daring but effective for Place.
It's the type of approach that these players have had to take, just decisive, aggressive at times out here in the wetness, and tried the turnaround shot, erupted. Now Muhan puts it back inside. Callahan can't get the one touch. Play still kept alive. Ross heads it forward for Holy Cross. Crusaders mounting a serious attack right now. Could there be a counter for Colgate, but way out in front of Freddy Johnson, the lone Raider player that was back. So this game started out 2-0 Colgate in the first half. Arno Rupp got one late in the first to turn it around, or start to turn it around for Holy Cross. Reserve Eddie Muhan, the freshman, added one in the second half. And now it's been Holy Cross on the offensive in the latter part of this game, as now the rain picks back up again. And everyone outside can blame me for the jinx. It is Stroud taking it towards the goal line. Who did that last touch? It looked like it will be a goal kick, and now there's a little shove between both of those players, Muhan and Stroud, following the play. As really Stroud made the right play, got the deflection off of Muhan, but then it hit Stroud again before going out, and then both players showed some frustration. We can see Muhan right over here. Eddie Muhan sharing a little smirk with his bench following that interaction between him and Stroud. The freshman against the senior. A team picked last in this conference heading into the season, Holy Cross, against a team coming off a Patriot League championship, picked second in that preseason poll in Colgate. Both exactly even in the standings. Both have 2 goals here tonight. Looking for a third goal to get their third conference win of the year. And the Raiders turn this into something. Johnson chips it forward nicely. Shot and a save again by Stutz. Rebound pushed out in front. Defensive player save, but no, it will count, it looks like. What is the call?
I think it's going to be a handball, red card, and then a penalty kick coming up. Holy Cross is arguing vehemently that it wasn't, and I don't think I've seen a card issued yet. And so maybe they're just saying the ball went in. They're not even saying that it was an illegal touch. Oh, they are saying it was an illegal touch.
So your call was right in the first place. Stutz made the one huge save against Stroud, and then on the rebound shot.
So Kafora is furious that the call is made that there's a penalty kick coming up, and Kafora needs to find his way off the pitch because he's been given the red card.
Now, it's interesting because Kafora was the one that was the one yellow card away from reaching 5 and having to miss a game. Well, he doesn't get that next yellow card, but he's going to have to miss the next game as well because of the red card.
Well, it doesn't seem like the players on the field have been totally informed on what the next step in the process is, and obviously Kafora does need to come off, and he's starting to make his way off right now.
That's the Holy Cross minutes leader this season. That's going to be out for the final 7:51 and however much longer this night goes, and then the next game as well. And then in the moment, in this crucial game in the standings, more importantly than that, you have the Raiders lining up a penalty kick. It'll be Jared Stroud. Henry Stutz has had some superhuman moments so far today to keep the game 2-2 like it is. Can he have one more that would top them all?
And it doesn't become easy with Stutz. While all that was happening, Stutz went back to his brown towel. He's had a towel back there that was draped over his shoulder when starting lineups were being introduced. Make sure that his gloves are totally dry. And that becomes critical here because you're going to have an absolute bullet fired on you. And if you get a piece of it, you need to be sure that if you guess right and get a glove on it, you don't want that ball just sliding away. It's going to be a slick ball to begin with. It's going to be a tough challenge to try and corral it.
Toughest play in the sport for the goalie. Is there a chance Stutz steps up against the senior here? Colgate can take the lead, and they do. Jared Stroud, the PK goal. He's now 3 for 3 on penalty kicks this year. Angrily firing it back towards midfield was Stutz. Jared Stroud, his third goal of the year. 13 points this season to lead Colgate.
And so for Holy Cross, after Colgate takes the lead, just under 8 minutes left. Now Holy Cross needs to channel all of the emotions that they are feeling. Obviously still much displeasure with how this has shaken out over the last couple minutes. They need to figure out a way here to channel this, get a goal, and force overtime. Otherwise, not a whole lot of time left for the Crusaders to try and do so.
We saw them spring into action, already come back from 2 goals down. Now they need a second comeback here with very limited time. We don't have access to replay at the moment, and really only the tape will tell if that was in fact a handball on the goal line by Kafora. And at the moment, really only he knows whether it was or not. He was arguing pretty passionately, but he got the red card. Callahan is called for the foul right there. But as you said, at the moment, that's irrelevant. Right now, Holy Cross is playing a man down. They have 7 minutes and 5 seconds to find a way to equalize in this really important conference game with just 3 games to go, including this one.
And the other point that's worth mentioning is, we talk about it being a red card. Well, it's 11 on 10 right now with Colgate having the man advantage with Kafora having to come off. So, not only are you down a goal, but with that red card inherently comes that man down disadvantage. So you're really working up a mountain in a couple of ways over the final 6:45.
They're going to send Sestero in for somebody to try to help offensively, the forward, senior from Massapequa. He's going to head all the way across to take this throw and replace Tyler Bell.
Keep an eye on Freddy Johnson for Colgate. He's going to be ready to bolt in the other direction because Holy Cross keeps pressing up and up and up as there's no other choice for them but to, with them trailing a man, trailing a goal, and only 6 minutes remaining.
Replacing number 21, Tyler Bell.
Luckily, offense has been pretty easy to come by. It's been a fast-moving, up-and-down game. As we see, do we see a booking right here? Yes, we do. And it's Freddy Johnson with his second yellow of the season.
This has been a remarkable number of bookings here today. Yellow cards, a bunch of them. Saw 2 in the first half and then a red card, but just a number of them in the second half as well in terms of additional yellow cards. So,
well, of course, the red card had nothing to do with the physical confrontation either.
Right.
But either way, lots of cards. The Reign has sort of returned to its first half form, I would say. Become pretty strong again. Still a pretty warm night for the time of year, no doubt. We were talking about that, the way the entire month of October has been. That's no change, but different conditions out here tonight with the rain. And now Holy Cross playing one man down, giving up a PK goal after the big comeback they made. Really demoralizing as they try to come back and try to stop their current losing streak and keep their foothold on that final space in the standings. Really tough situation for the Crusaders with under 5 minutes to play. You feel for a team giving up that deciding goal potentially on a PK like that, but could argue on the other hand, Colgate certainly, they earned it with the way they created that opportunity as well. Colgate definitely, in a lot of ways, earned that. Now, the exact call is going to be subject to debate. The film will tell the story on it, but it was some great play by the forwards and the midfielders for Colgate.
Right.
That set that whole thing up.
Kafora made what was an absolutely, if that were legal, it were a heroic type play.
Is this on sides? No, it is not.
And so Kafora, you've got that play, and so I think you're exactly right. Where Colgate, you've got to tip the cap to what they were able to achieve offensively, and you're talking about trying to pull a rabbit out of your hat just to keep it out of the net. And in reality, it was headed towards being a 3-2 game, if not for what seemed like it could have been that Herculean-type effort by Kafora on the goal line.
Some mixed news right now with 4 minutes to play. Army did fall to BU, leaving them at worst for Holy Cross. If the Crusaders wind up losing this game, tied in the standings still with the Crusaders, but Lafayette came back from their deficit to defeat Navy, and they were 2-4 coming into the night. If Holy Cross loses, obviously Colgate's going to advance past them, plus have the head-to-head tiebreaker in the standings, and Lafayette will move past Holy Cross as well, because Lafayette has won, and right now Loyola is crushing American 4-1. So American will lose and stay with only 2 victories and 6 points. Army lost, but Lafayette is going to be a mover in tonight's standings. Potentially could be Lafayette and Colgate occupying the final 2 spots if this score stays the same after 3 minutes.
That's all they've got left. Let's see whether, if Holy Cross is able to pinch up possession, how far up Stutz will come to help with the offense, and if that's even an opportunity that they develop.
Morrison for Colgate, going to put this one on goal. Diving save by Stutz. For a game where 3 goals have been scored by Colgate, Stutz has been mighty impressive. Now with 6 saves. Make that actually 7 after that one. Substitution to send Chase Pagani back in. And leaving is Chris DiPietro, who scored in the 16th minute.
Into the game for Colgate is number.
Since those first 16 minutes of no shots in the first half for either team, DiPietro scored on the first shot of the game, and it's been a furious back and forth pace since then.
Correction, into the game for Colgate is number 2, Chase Pagani.
Precious last couple of chances perhaps for Holy Cross. There's still hope left because they play teams near them in the standings with games at Army and home against Lehigh on Senior Day to close out the season. This does not doom the season yet. It puts Holy Cross out of the playoffs for now, but they have a chance to play their way back in. It all depends on the results in the final 2 games at that point. Offsides with 1:10 to go now as Holy Cross restarts it. Just 70 seconds left. Sent all the way ahead. You never know, could get a lucky bounce here late. And they do! It's a goal from Sestero! 3-3! Nicholas Sestero!
They're down a man after a red card, and they're back with their backs against the wall, but with 62 seconds left, a long ball. Arno Rupp was able to get it to a midsection. He planted himself at the top of the box, was able to swing and redirect the ball back to Nicholas Sestero, and Sestero finishes.
Beautiful work inside the box from Holy Cross. Culminates in Sestero scoring his first of the season and his 4th of his career. He's had exactly 1 every single year during his 4-year career for the Crusaders. We were reading them their rights in this one, as that one gets underneath the chin right there of Oberg. That had to hurt, but pretty much talking about what was going to happen when Holy Cross loses. Instead, out of nowhere, the Crusaders tie it up again. What a turn in a fantastic soccer game here in the Patriot League. 3-3 with 15 seconds to play.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
5 seconds. Can they get one more shot?
3, 2.
Morrison gonna take it, and the horn sounds as it gets by Stutz, but does not go anyway. My goodness. The twists and turns tonight here in Worcester, 3-3. Holy Cross and Colgate both deserve more. The Crusaders are a man down, but they have a chance to play more soccer and boost their hopes of the Patriot League tournament. Overtime coming up next on the Patriot League Network on Stadium. Overtime in Worcester, the 4th overtime game of the season for Holy Cross, and here's what we have through regulation in terms of the numbers. The shots, still a major advantage for Colgate. Both teams have taken great advantage of the corner kicks they have gotten. The major reason why it's 3-3.
But how about 7 staves from Henry Stutz, the junior goalkeeper from Cincinnati? He's been outstanding back there all night long. He's the reason that this one is even heading to overtime, as much as you want to highlight that goal with 62 seconds left from Nicholas Sestero. A heroic effort, a heroic finish. But Stutz has had plenty of opportunities to crack time and time again tonight, and he frankly hasn't, even with 3 goals going past him.
This is the 4th time to say it one more time. And we were kind of expecting this in a way. 4th time in the last 6 years that Colgate and Holy Cross have gone to overtime when they have met up. This year, Holy Cross is 0-1-2 in overtime contests. Their most recent one being a loss against American here at home a couple of games ago on the 14th. Colgate this year is 0-1-1. Their lone overtime conference game was a draw against Lehigh, and then more recently than that, lost on the road out of conference at Cornell. So neither team with an overtime win, would not hurt either team terribly in the standings to come away with a draw.
Obviously, if you're Colgate, when you're up a man and you're up a goal with 62 seconds left, you assume that you're going to come away with the win, but you get a big collision as it was Muhan stepping up for Holy Cross.
The injured player is Jared Stroud. Nobody more important on the Colgate side for the Raiders than Stroud.
The official is standing over him, is going to force Stroud to get up, give him a help. Give him a hand.
And reminder, Holy Cross is playing 10 on 11. Justin Kaffour hit with the red card, trying to save the ball from going in the net, called for a handball. Free kick, and Morrison's going to try. Golden goal here in overtime. Johnson, Morrison, too loud right there. And the goal kick for Henry Stutz, as this rain has grown to a torrential level yet again.
That was an absolute blast off the foot of Morrison, and it was slicing up and away from Stutz. And as far as Holy Cross is concerned, that's a bullet dodged, because that was going to be awfully hard for Stutz to handle.
Corner kick. Colgate can really push the pedal to the metal here, a man up in overtime. Heroic job by the Crusaders and Sestero and Rupp, who set him up, of getting that equalizing goal so late in regulation, but how long is the feeling going to last? That one barely evades the net as well, but a goal kick. And we were debating the exact strategy right now, a man down in overtime. I mean, clearly Holy Cross is going to have to be very careful, but, you know, considering how unlikely it would seem, the longer time goes on for Holy Cross to avoid giving up a goal with a man down, are there times when you would try to be a bit aggressive selectively from the Holy Cross side, even though they're a man down?
Well, I think that this game lends itself to that more, and we've talked about the conditions, and it is raining as hard as we've seen it rain all night here in this first overtime. It's really one of those games where you can just take that quick counter and try and force one downfield. You don't need a huge, long 90-second build in order to get yourself in a scoring position here tonight. These goals have all come rather quickly.
Barsic, hesitation move. He drew multiple defenders. Now it's Leahy looking for Callahan. This is a more drawn-out possession as Ross creeps up. Furthest man back is Wright. He'll blast it all the way forward. See if they can get a lucky bounce. That's how they got the goal at the end of regulation. And it's a close proximity free kick for the Crusaders midway through the first overtime.
Rupp went down, and it seemed like Rupp might have just had that inside position enough where it was determined by him going down that the Colgate player skied over his back. And this is going to be a wonderful setup for Holy Cross here in the first overtime.
It's right now 5, maybe 6 coming up to the wall for Colgate, close to 7 that are all in that area of creating the wall. Making a huge wall out in front of the goal. Arno Rupp leads Holy Cross in goals this season, and he scores, and Holy Cross wins it! A man down! Arno Rupp, the senior, for the 6th time this season, make it 7 with this goal earlier tonight. Wins it in overtime for Holy Cross.
A number of the Colgate players are on their back in disbelief. This game was 62 seconds away from being a Raiders victory at the end of regulation. And instead, an absolute beauty in overtime by Rupp is the winner.
Peter Tappins didn't even flinch.
No,
he had no view.
It's almost as if he just never saw it, or it's either he didn't see it, or the ball came off the foot of Rupp with such force that he thought this one's either going wide or this game's going home.
It curved around the wall. We talked about how it was the majority of the Colgate team making that wall, and it sort of ended up working against them. Tappington never saw it. Rupp placed it perfectly. Arno Rupp with his 7th goal of the season. He scored 2 tonight. And a man down late after giving up a goal on a PK off of a red card. Holy Cross scores once with about a minute to go in regulation, and then again halfway through overtime, and they win it 4-3 and place themselves in 5th place in the standings.
And how about that? Here we are talking about Holy Cross and what the opportunity is for them, looking forward at all the different scores and the teams that are going to be moving and shaking up the standings. Well, and now it's Holy Cross, instead of being 7th or 8th and outside looking in, needing some help themselves over the final 2 matches. Fate is in their hand with Army coming up, and then after Army, they've got Lehigh to finish it up here on Senior Day.
So with Army losing, Holy Cross taking down Colgate. We talked about some of the other action in league play as well. The Army game playing as the most important one, but this 3-way tie that the night began with between Army, Colgate, and Holy Cross, it's now the Crusaders standing on top of it in 5th place, all alone in the Patriot League. 4-3 is your final on the overtime game winner, his 7th of the season, 2nd of the night for the senior from Austria, Arno Rupp. For Adam Giardino and our entire Patriot League Network crew, I'm AJ Cannell signing off from Linda Johnson Smith Soccer Stadium in Worcester. Holy Cross on top of Colgate 4-3 in overtime. This has been a presentation of the Patriot League Network on Stadium.